And then lastly, whether you're using Baselane Core or Baselane Smart, I really highlight the reports, right? I've kind of mentioned the visibility that we offer and how your properties are doing performance-wise. Obviously, May and June were very peak. It's pretty steady right now. But what I really like about it is, net cash flow. You can also do um, NOI, so like a profit and loss. This is for all the properties here, so it can kind of tell you where you're going with this as well. The table's great because I like to do this by unit and I like to do this maybe by property. So I could do a side by side and see how each of these properties are doing, right? So why did I had a higher property taxes here. I had a lot higher of repairs for Harmony Triplex than I did in Hillside in the last 6 months. And what does that look like? I can click on it and I can see all of the different types of categories that I've typed in for, or I've all the different transactions that I've tagged for the repair. So it's like essentially double checking your work. I also highlight, our tax package here. I think this is a great one to have for bookkeeping. I'm sorry, for our upcoming taxes. I'll show you the report as well, but the tax package is great because it'll include all of the categories that we've tagged, any attachments, so any receipts that you've attached, whether it was auto matched or individually attached per transaction, and it'll include the Schedule E report. So the Schedule E report is this one here. And so this report, it'll just show you what categories will be on the Schedule E, but of course you can also choose subcategories if you wanted, and you can download it as a CSV. In about a week or two, all of our reports will be downloadable via PDF, which we cannot wait. But they are CSV right now. Tenant ledgers, these are great if you are collecting rent into a Baselane bank, if you're collecting rent on Baselane it's rent collection tool, right? So this person is collecting rent on Baselane's rent collection tool. This is an awesome ledger. You can kind of see what they paid, what they haven't been able to download it. Rent roll is going to be like your whole occupancy history as well. So you can kind of see what's going on as of today, the last year, things like that, and so forth. And then more within the reporting, we have the NOI, the profit and loss, the Schedule E, the tax package, these roles, and we're working on launching probably a balance sheet in the new year as well. And that's pretty much a lot of the bookkeeping here. I'm going to jump into the rent collection or I should say property management, and start over with the tenant screening. So if you are screening tenants, or if you have a vacant property and are interested in screening tenants, you can set up the screening here by clicking on tenant screening, click set up tenant screening, choose your property, choose the unit, tell us what the rent amount is, if it's an LLC or not, and then you can choose, the type of reports that you'd like. We do partner with a tenant screening company called Boom. So it is a collaboration of Baselane and Boom. Basic reporting, the cost is $24.99. It would include these items here. You can toggle for enhanced reporting, which can bring you up to $49.99, so $50. These are charged to the tenant. So it can range between $24.99 to $49.99 depending, and it's charged to the tenant that is applying. So once you click next, you're clicking understand, you are selecting this and so forth, and that you're agreeing to the terms. And then from there, you can start screening. And when we say start screening, you can actually invite your applicant. You can choose their email, enter their email or text them through the copy invitation link or application link. And what's important to note there is that tenant who has been invited can also add co-applicants, guarantors to that entire tenant application. Each applicant invited does have to pay, so each of them are individually charged. We do offer also just like a sample report, I believe. When we click setup screening, I might just be able to show you that highlight a little bit, but there should be a sample report here that we can download. Oh yeah, download the sample report and you can kind of take a look. Can you see this, Llama? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is kind of the sample report. You can take a look of what it would look like, what a report would look like once it's completed and you have that review. So you can also approve it. You can conditionally approve it if you need additional documentation, but you can see kind of what we request on these reports as well. And they are available to you. So inactive would be like I approved this user, I'm sorry, this tenant as an example. And then hopefully we can go in and kind of see the report. So we click review. It was application was conditionally approved, but it'll show it. It'll also show if there are warnings. And you can also print the report here. Now, if things are good and you've approved it, then go over to the lease agreement here. You can create state-specific leases. We charge $10 per lease, but that includes state-specific leases per state, so it has specific disclosures, addendums. It's powered through Rocket Lawyer. You can, of course, edit and add anything that you need for those leases. And it also includes signing, so signing yourself, all of the signers of the lease as well. If you upload agreements, it's e-sign optional. So you can upload agreement and not have to pay and just store your leases on here, or you can upload a lease agreement if you're just looking for e-signing. We cannot edit lease agreements that you're uploading, but we can offer the e-signing feature. It's $5, but you can add as many signers as you'd like to that lease that you upload. Everything that's been uploaded will be here. It'll show you when signing is complete, when it's ready to customize. This is a state-specific lease that is ready, so it will show you kind of what this looks like very briefly. Once it loads, it might not, my apologies. But it'll, when you click customize lease, you'll be able to kind of have that popped up. You can also view leases that have been imported and such, and have that access. And then lastly, you got to go over to that rent collection and set up the rent collection. You can set up rent collection for any property that is even occupied. So if you have a multi-tenant lease, then you can invite each of your tenants separately to pay their portion in an occupied property. If you are a midterm investor and you need to collect security deposit because your occupied property, that tenant is leaving, but you have a new one and you want to collect a security deposit and set up rent collection, you can do that even though the property might be occupied. When you're setting up the rent collection here, the nice thing is you can do a lease term. It could be fixed term, so it can be a future lease. It can be an existing lease. I'll start for November 1st here with an end date of 2026. Click there, click the rent amount, and then, you can add reoccurring fees. Reoccurring fees would be maybe a parking fee, maybe a pet fee, fees that are not going to change. They will be the same. And those would be fees that, essentially are the same amount here. And then you'll tell us when is rent due. So if it's due on the first, then all the invoices will be, generated from the first on, the first. But if you're on Baselane on the third and rent is due on the first and you still need to collect rent for that month that you set it up, you can of course create a one-time invoice to get that, since all the other invoices will generate the first and we can't generate invoices in the past essentially. And then late fee, you can add a late fee here. We always, it could be per day or a one time. If it's initially, if you want to start that per day, we always want to get the initial one-time fee. So maybe it's $50. The sixth day, you can do the amount or a percentage. Daily late fees, this is also between the amount or percentage. So if they were charged the $50 every day after until they pay, they are charged $5. If you have a monthly maximum, I could say $100. Okay, not 1,000. The monthly maximum is 100, and essentially, if I already had that one-time fee of $50, then the per days can only go up to 50 to get to that $100 max, essentially. So this is also something that you have that ability to do. Now it'll give you kind of what that preview would look like. You'll click continue, and now this is where you can add one-time fee and deposits. Security deposit. So this is great if you are, just setting it up, you need to receive a security deposit. You can put in the amount and the date that needs to be received. So I'll just say it's the same day. You can mark it as paid if you've already received it, and we'll put that into the rent collection terms too, that it's been paid. If you collect last month's rent up front, then that invoice for, the last month will not be generated since it'll be generated in the beginning, but you can do that there. Prorated if they're moving in the middle of the month. One-time fees, move-in fee, or maybe you still need to collect the rent in November, but it's the third. You can create a fee, a one-time fee here. And you can also do that once the rent collection is set up. Then step 4 is going to give you a preview of all the invoices generated. And then step 5 is telling you where to receive the rent. So again, I've highlighted if you collect rent into a Baselane bank account, it is free for your tenants to pay ACH, account number and routing number. Your tenants have the option to connect their account via Plaid instantly. It is the easiest way for them to do it. If they don't want to connect through Plaid, they can manually add their bank account number and routing number. I do want to be mindful that they will not be able to pay their rent after they've added it manually because we do need to verify. There will be a manual verification that goes out. It's called a micro deposit that they'll need to wait for, and there will be a code that they would be able to enter. But that's only if they do the manual route, meaning account number and routing number manually entered, and they don't want to connect via Plaid. If they pay debit or credit card, they can do that as well, but there is a 3.49% processing fee charged to the tenant, not to the landlord if they pay debit or credit card. We do highlight this in the tenant portal as well. But in this case, we want to make sure that your tenants pay, they can pay for free for ACH, collect it into a Baselane bank account. If you do collect it into an external bank, that's fine too. There is a $2 fee per ACH invoice, and you as a landlord can make the decision of who will be taking on that $2 fee, the tenant or the landlord. Lastly, step 6 here is you're inviting your tenant. It is one tenant per lease creation. If you have two separate tenants, you can invite them to pay their portion individually. If you prefer to receive the entire amount, then you can designate one tenant to be like the primary, and the other tenant can pay them obviously outside a Baselane so they can pay the full amount. You'll need their first name, their last name, their email, and their phone number. They will receive an invitation to set up their account. They do not need to go to Baselane and create an account. We actually very much want to avoid that. We want them to wait until the invitation is created or the setup rent collection is set up. You can get the invitation link. You can text them. They will receive an email as well and text message. And then step 7. You are just reviewing and confirming everything looks good. And if everything looks good, you can confirm and invite your tenant, and they will have, a copy link here that you can send to them, but they'll also have that rent, the emails coming from Baselane. We do send rent reminders. We do send tenant rent reminders. Failed payments can happen. We do inform landlords when their tenants have created their accounts, when payments have failed, when payments are processing, when payments are completed. Additionally, when you have rent set up on Baselane, you can go in. Let me go to John, sorry. You can go in and actually see the tenant onboarding progress. So it'll tell you if the account is activated. It'll tell you if they've added a payment method. If these are not checked off, then the tenant hasn't really started the process. They can always reach out to us. Llama can put our details to contact support with our hours of operation, live chat, phone, email, and such. And you as the landlord have access to all of your invoices. So viewing all your invoices, you can make edits to any invoice as long as the payment status is not pending or completed. So you can go in, you can edit an invoice, you can mark it as paid, you can delete. If you edit, you can add new invoice items, you can change the due date and such. Also, you can add one-time fees. I think these are great if you need to collect fees that are outside of the rent. So maybe you bill utilities in the middle of the month. After you've calculated it, you can create a one-time fee and choose where the bank account is going or where the rent is going, the item, and the amount. Your tenants can also opt in for Autopay. I do want to be mindful that one-time fees are not part of Autopay because they are one-time fees, but the rent and fees will be remain on Autopay if they opt in. And then, of course, you as the landlord can go into the rent collection terms, make changes if the rent increases. By $500 as an example for the following year, you can tell us the effective date So maybe it's going to increase in May. You can tell us that, and we'll, update all the invoices from May of 2026 onward to be this amount. But the remaining invoices prior would stay at that $1,000. So once we update this and we go over to the invoices, you'll see the changes here. So it'll stay at 1,000 until you get to May 1st. So this is another way that you can add add increases. You can push out your rent collection and such as well. And then lastly, this payment summary is great because here, this is going to tell you every month, what is processing, what is overdue, what is completed. It's very high level, but it will show you. You might also see 2-day rent enabled. If you are a Baselane Smart user, we are offering, 2-day rent enabled, so processing in 2 business days. Baselane uses a payment processor. They don't process on weekends or federal holidays. If your tenant schedules on a weekend, that following business day will be the first processing. So we do say we can process payments within 2 business days and deposit it into your account with Baselane Smart. For Baselane core users, it's a standard 5 business days to process and deposit payments. If your tenant's payments fail on Baselane Smart, there are various reasons why: insufficient funds. Some things may happen. If it fails, then for transparency, the next 2 payments that will be completed by your tenant will need to be completed with no failed issues and be processed on the standard processing time. So that way we can give assurance that, these payments will not fail and process it back on the 2 business days. So keep in mind, if the tenant does have a failed payment and you're on Baselane Smart, the next 2 consecutive payments have to be on that standard processing, and then and once they're completed, there's no failed attempts. Obviously, they can go back onto that 2 business day processing here as well. Each invoice has like a payment timeline. So if I wanted, I could go over to my completed for the month. I can click in and it'll tell me, when did the tenant schedule the payment? If the payment failed, is it being processed? When is the expected completion date as well?